Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, today we've got another top 10 tips video, and this one we're going to focus on the home gunsmith. That's right. A lot of folks are working on guns themselves at their house. I mean, look, money's tight, and plus people have taken a great interest in trying to learn more about firearms, and people have also taken a much greater interest in being self-sufficient in many ways in their life, right? And working on your own firearms is one way that you can definitely learn more about the technology you're wielding and, be self-sufficient. If you have a problem, be able to self-diagnose, self-correct. Maybe it's just as simple as taking care of your own guns, keeping them running. But these tips are for you, the home gunsmith, the person who wants to take this up and learn a little bit more and go further down the rabbit hole. So we're going to get into this. I would like to thank our friends at SDI for supporting today's video. If you are looking for a career in gunsmithing, or if you want to learn more about, more of the technology side, more of the business side, the reloading side. I mean, there's a lot of different things within firearms that they teach, but they are a distance learning program with some awesome instructors, awesome curriculum. Check them out if you're wanting to get more into the professional realm of gunsmithing. They're definitely a great group of people to look into. So check them out, Sonoran Desert Institute, SDI, and tell them we sent you over there. All right, but we're going to break into these. And these are some tips that I've figured out over the years that I hope will help some of you. These definitely helped me. They took me many years to figure some of this stuff out, but maybe I can save some of you some grief and get you pointed in the right direction, okay? So let's break into these. Number one, know your limits and when you're in over your head. This is very important. Look, it's okay to break into a project. It's okay to grab a gun and start pulling it apart and just see how far you can get with it and everything like that. But if it gets to a point where you're about to do something that you're going to regret, it's probably important to recognize that and go to a professional, okay? Look, there's no shame in it, right? If you have a gunsmith at your local FFL, I mean, like when I worked at Moss with Ray up there, we would have people come in all the time with a bag with a gun in it and pieces and go, I got this apart and I don't know how to put it back together. I mean, look, instead of putting it back together the wrong way or whatever, if you do need to seek some professional help, look, the way you need to consider that, it's part of the learning process, right? If you got in over your head, it means that you pushed yourself to some limit that you weren't comfortable being in. But you know what? That's how you learn, is to start breaking into stuff. If you make a little mistake or you get stuck, seek some help out. It's okay. They're not going to, well, they might judge you, but they might laugh later. But look, it's okay to go to your local shop and say, hey, I'm in over my head. Now, I want to provide one caveat there with this. Now, a lot of gunsmiths are going to charge you more money to fix a screw up than they are if you would have just brought it to them in the first place. But again, I digress. Know your limits, know when you're in over your head, and know when you need to go and see a professional about a given problem. All right. Sometimes you just got to go to somebody with more experience, and it's okay to recognize when you don't have the expertise to complete a task. It's important that you recognize that and go, you know what? We need to go see a professional. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Number two, invest in a quality screwdriver set like the Brownells Magna-tip set. This is very important. Not all screwdrivers are made equal. I have to say that probably one of the most common problems that I ever saw when I was working with Ray in the gunsmith shop at Moss was that people would use the incorrect screwdriver bits, okay? Like you go and you buy like some Craftsman mechanics screwdrivers and start turning on gun screws and you booger up the heads of the screws really bad. You got to get a hollow ground style that has a flat square bottom. So the way that those gunsmithing screwdriver bits are ground is very specific so that the head fills up the slot of the screw completely and fully. Some of the taper ground like you see in a traditional screwdriver from a mechanic set has a really little like thin taper. And if you look at it really close, just take a gunsmith screw, a screw on a firearm. Don't turn it, but just put a regular mechanic screwdriver in there and look at it under some bright light with the slot facing towards the light, and you'll see that the head of that screwdriver the bit does not even begin to fill up the head of most screws used in applications for gunsmithing. The Brownells sets, they are made specifically both the width, the depth, all of the different tips that are included in the Magna-tip set, especially the big set, they will cover a myriad of different screw types, all right? And it's important you use the appropriate bit for the appropriate screw. Take your time and fit it properly so you don't bust up the screw or mess up the head. Especially on a really expensive gun, you don't want to ruin your gun, right? So that's very important. Brownells offers their Magna-tip set in a couple of different sizes. They've got like a little basic sort of road set like you put in your range bag. That was my first set. That's totally something that you should have in your range bag anyway. They also make a real fancy deluxe set with, I think it's like 100 pieces with all different types of stuff in it. If you can afford it, and if you're really serious about working on your own guns, I would strongly consider probably picking up one of those sets at some point. Invest in it. You'll be glad you did. All right. Number 3, I recommend a set of the T-handle hex drivers. All right. So I don't have them in front of me right now. I did order them through Brownells, but they're basically like, I know you've seen those mechanics T-handles that has the long hex on it, and it's just got like a rubberized handle, right? Those are very handy for gunsmithing use, right? There's going to be situations where you have to kind of, get deep down inside of a receiver, or maybe you got to bust a grip screw loose on an AR grip or something, or there may be some application where you have to, get kind of far down inside of a hole inside of a gun, a few inches or whatever, where a standard Allen key or something may not be very practical. And if you can get it to bite, you may not have a lot to grab onto to get it to turn, especially if you've got to break loose a really tight screw. So I recommend those T-handles. They are extremely useful for gunsmithing applications, and they'll come in handy on your motorcycles and four-wheelers and scooters and things like that as well. So definitely invest in a set of those. I'll try to provide a photo of the ones that I got through Brownells. Totally worth it. They're not that expensive, and they'll serve you in a bunch of different ways, not just gunsmithing, but also in the mechanic shop. All right, number 4. If a screw won't move, don't force it. Apply heat or some creeping oil like Croil and try again. All right, so Croil is a product that I strongly recommend. It really only has one specific use, but it's known as the oil that creeps. I like Croil because it will absolutely get down in the most stubborn little spots and help you break loose stuck parts. Maybe it's a gun that has been taken apart in a long time and some of the parts are stuck together, or you got some old dry grease that has dried out and frozen up some of your parts. You can apply a little bit of heat. Now, I ain't talking a lot of heat. A little bit of heat now, okay? Pick you up one of those kitchen torches, like you see the people they caramelize the sugar on like a creme brulee or something like that, like a little kitchen torch. Pick yourself up a small torch from Home Depot or wherever, and just use a little bit of heat. Apply a little bit of Croil, a couple of drops, and just work a little bit of heat, and then apply, and then using your appropriate Magna-tip set, give it a little bit of pressure, and you'll see that sometimes a little bit of heat and some creeping oil will help get those stuck parts loose. But don't force them, because you will booger up the heads, and now you're going to be into a worse situation. Or worse, you might break them or something like that. You don't want to bust a screw off, and then you're into a whole nother drama with that. Another thing I want to mention about stuck screws is that now this is probably more of I'd say a recent development in the gunsmithing world, and just especially with ARs and all the more modern type of firearms that we see, is thread locking compounds, okay? You need to know when you go to bust a screw loose, you need to know what one feels like, if it's green Loctite, blue Loctite, red Loctite, or rock set. Or in some cases, I've seen people use green sleeve retaining compound. Now, if they've done that, it ain't coming loose, right? But there are very specific ways that you get all of those various thread lockers to loosen up, right? With thread locking compounds such as Loctite, you're going to apply some heat. So a stuck screw with some dried up oil and some Croil, it'd be the same thing for Loctite with a little bit of heat. It should melt that Loctite and break it loose. But something like rock set, which we use a rock set on muzzle devices and things like that, and brakes, and sometimes screws, like the action. So the screws that go on like a flat top for like your bolt action or something, I'll use rock set because I don't want them to back out. You use cold water to bust open rock set, right? So if I need to get a muzzle device on that's glued on with rock set, I actually have to take myself a bucket and put some ice water in it And that's what gets your rock set loose. So understand what's keeping something stuck and know the appropriate thing to do to get it unstuck. And know when to stop if it's not moving. It's not moving for a reason, okay? So always recognize that and take a minute, take a step back, drink some coffee, and think about it. Okay, number 5. Cold bluing has its place for touch-ups if done properly. Now, some of my old videos on YouTube, I'm not going to get into a ton of detail on this because I feel like it's kind of another conversation, but, you know, I've done some videos before where I've used cold blue to completely re-blue entire firearms. Probably not the best thing to do, but bluing is awesome for touch-ups. So if you're doing some work and you have a scratch on a gun, maybe it's a hunting rifle that you know, I don't know, for whatever reason you had some handling marks on it, and there's some spots where the bluing's got some wear or scratch, even a single scratch. It's just, you can see the white of the metal where the bluing has been rubbed through. Cold bluing is great. Oxbow blue is king. You can get it from Brownells. Okay, the Oxbow blue is a really, really great product. It is fantastic, and I recommend using some cotton swabs, or possibly you could use some Q-tips, but again, heat is your friend, right? Apply a little bit of heat, and if you warm that metal up before you apply the cold bluing, it really helps it adhere, okay? And it'll turn the darkest black, and it'll look really, really great. And look, if you're in doubt about using cold blue, test it on something, right? Find a scrap piece of barrel or whatever you might have laying around that you don't mind messing up, and experiment on a piece of crap part first before you use it on your cherished gun. Okay, so look, cold blue has its place, and I think every home gunsmith needs to have a can of Oxbow blue laying around. It lasts forever as long as you keep it in a cool, dry place, and it is totally a great thing to have laying around for the hobby gunsmith. Okay, number 6, oil and steel wool are your friend, okay? I cannot emphasize this enough. Like, I've seen so many rusty, nasty guns come in, and people are going, oh my gosh, how in the world are we going to clean all? I mean, I'm talking red, frothing with rust, and you're thinking, wow, there's no way you're going to clean that gun, right? Well, there's a couple of different things you can do, all right? If the gun's completely covered in rust, well, Mark Novak would tell you to boil it out, and he's true. And he's correct. That red oxide will convert into black oxide in boiling water. So you'd be surprised if a gun is completely and uniformly covered in red rust and you're thinking, wow, this thing's never going to clean up. Take it apart, boil it. It'll convert the red oxide to black oxide. And then you card it. You've got bluing. That's how rust bluing works. You'd be surprised how good it might work. But getting back to the steel wool and oil, let's say it's just some light surface rust, all right? Let's hope that you don't have any pitting developing. That's another story, but say you got to clean a part off that's got some surface rust. Take some oil and some steel wool and just go over it. And you would think, well, steel wool, isn't that going to rub the bluing off? Absolutely not. You need to use a 3 or a quad alt. I use quad alt, the real fine stuff. Take that steel wool, get it oiled up, whatever oil you have, and just go over it lightly, and it will clean it right up. It will brighten that bluing right back up. Totally a hack, totally something that everybody that does their own gunsmithing needs to know. Took me a long time to learn this stuff, so I'm trying to share this with you and save you a lot of trouble. Okay, number 7. If you clean a lot of guns, you'll eventually want to invest in ultrasonic. This is so important, especially if you're ever going to wind up getting into gunsmithing professionally. And let's say you're going to clean a lot of guns. You might have 10 or 12 cleanings to do throughout the entire day. Or if you're an enthusiast home gunsmith, like we're talking about here, and let's just say you shoot a lot of guns. You went to the range and you took 8 or 10 guns out, and now you get back, it's like, wow, I've got 10 guns to clean today. That could take a long time to bust all those things apart and clean them by hand, okay? Having an ultrasonic, especially once you learn, how to really tell which parts are what, after a while, you could break apart 10 different guns and toss them in ultrasonic, turn the ultrasonic on, put your cleaning solution in there, drink some coffee, unload your truck, reload your mags, do inventory, play Minecraft, do whatever the heck you're going to do. And then 30 minutes later, pull all those random parts out. And eventually you'll be able to do this. You'll be able to take all the random parts, dry them off, reassemble the guns, lubricate, maybe clean a few trouble spots with a stubborn spots with a brush. But generally, ultrasonics take the grunt work out of cleaning your guns at home. Now, there are a lot of options for ultrasonics, everything from super entry level all the way up through the really professional units. The Infante ultrasonics are amongst the best. You guys might remember the Crest ultrasonics if some of you are old enough. But Infante, I'm telling you, he makes a fine ultrasonic. So if you want one of the best ultrasonics, Infante is the king of the hill for ultrasonics. However, if you don't want to buy something real expensive, the Lyman ones are great. I've got a Lyman now that I've had for about 5 years, and it's been holding up great. The heating element in it is awesome. Both my Infante and my Lyman are awesome ultrasonics. And if you spend a bit of money, invest some money in a quality ultrasonic, you will save yourself a ton of time. And I'm telling you, in the long run, you're going to be like, wow, why did I not do this in the beginning? Okay. And trust me, that's a bought lesson for me. I spent many a time scrubbing guns by hand, and that's for the birds. Trust me. You're going to love having an ultrasonic. Number 8, keep your workbench as clean as possible. This is very important. The reason you want to keep your workbench clean is because you are interacting with your firearm on your workbench. All right, you don't want to get parts mixed up with another gun. That's important. You don't want a tool scratching a gun. So if you're dealing with a bunch of different firearms, and again, this could also really deal with professionals as well. You ever notice that a professional gunsmith generally has a very clean bench? Yeah, because if you bring Grandpappy's, I don't know, Crown grade fancy Turkish walnut Sweet 16 Browning that was made in 1950 or something like that, that ain't got a scratch on it, or it's an heirloom piece, you definitely don't want your ring scratching it, or a tool, or you've got a messy workbench with a bunch of crap laying all over it. And what do? You're not going to put the gun down on, have a hammer or a file sitting on the bench. So like putting your tools back where they belong and keeping your bench nice and clean is going to ensure that you're not going to inadvertently scratch up or mar up or mess up a fine gun that you don't want to mess up. Plus, it's just good to make sure that you're keeping a tidy workspace. It helps you keep track of your tools so you don't lose anything, and it's just good common sense to make sure you're keeping a clean workbench. So take the time, clean your workbench, organize your tools, so if you need a tool, you always know where it is. And that could go to mechanic shop, right? Carpentry, doesn't matter. Keep a clean shop, you'll be happy you did. All right? Number 9. Brownells Gunsmithing Kinks are a great read for lots of little tips and hacks. Yes, I've got all the volumes of the Brownells Gunsmithing Kinks. Again, a big shout out to Brownells. Basically, the Kinks are just a volume. They're books with all sorts of little cool hacks that you can learn for the hobby gunsmith and the professional alike. So if and they're not expensive. And some of the information is so awesome. And some of the stories are kind of funny too. Some of them are just little stories that gunsmiths have shared over the years. So if you're getting into it, it might be a great read to pick up a couple of volumes of Gunsmithing Kinks. I strongly recommend it. The books are great, and they're full of very useful knowledge. And some useless knowledge too, which is always fun. Okay. Number 10. Invest in quality cleaning rods, jags, pulls, brushes, and mops. Don't overlook bore snakes for a quick cleaning. This is very important. As you begin to, engage in your own home gunsmithing, you're going to find that, you're going to run into some situations where you certainly are going to need a variety of different cleaning rods and different cleaning attachments to properly perform various tasks. Now, I'm not going to get into a ton of detail here because we have other videos where we talk about some of this stuff, but such as like slugging a bore, or maybe you need to do a chamber casting or something like that. Okay, it helps to have some sturdy rods that you can really put the brakes on something. Maybe you've got a stuck bolt, or you've got a stuck part or something, and you've got to really put the brakes on something, hit it hard. Having a variety of different rods of very different material types is pretty important. I do like the Tipman rods quite a bit. Also, Shooter's Choice rods are fantastic. I love the Shooter's Choice pistol rods. They are some of the best on the market. Fantastic. I strongly recommend the Otis bore snakes. They are fantastic. Sometimes you just need to run a quick rod through something, run a bore snake through something and just clean the bore. Maybe you're at the range and your gun is still kind of warm and you want to just snake it out real quick to make cleanup, later at home easier. I recommend bore snakes. They are super useful for a wide variety of different applications. Super useful in the field for your hunting situations too. I would always keep a bore snake in your hunting gear just in case you need to swab out a gun. I mean, it happens, right? Like we get a little bore obstruction. We might have, sat the gun down the wrong way and got a little plug of dirt in the barrel, or, maybe it got wet. Right, you're in an adverse environment and you got a lot of moisture. You might want to snake that barrel out and just make sure it's dry so you don't get any rust or corrosion from adverse conditions. Bore snakes have their place, and I think they're super important. Also, Otis has the lead cleaning wipes and all different types of various wipes that are very useful that you can look at too. All right, so one more. We've got a wild card. This is technically number 11. The wild card is, don't be afraid to grab a gun and take it apart. You're never going to learn how to work on your own guns if you're intimidated by your own guns, right? Believe me, the first time I took a Luger apart or a Browning A5, I was very intimidated. I thought, wow, I'm going to screw something up here. But especially a Mauser broom handle. The first time I took a Mauser broom handle apart, I was intimidated because the only screw in the dang gun is what holds the grips on. So there are a lot of gun designs that are going to challenge you, and that's okay. And that's what got me into guns so heavily, early on, is I loved all of the different mechanical, just the mechanics of guns. I was always so fascinated in the engineering, how the parts go together, how they're machined, how they fit together, the disassembly and reassembly process. What was going through these people's mind when they came up with these really cool gun designs? I remember the first time I took an infield rifle apart, like a 3-band infield, or like a SMLE or whatever. There's a lot of parts on an infield. A lot of people don't realize that at first it looks basic, but when you start taking it apart, there's a lot of dang parts. You're sitting there with 80 parts on the table going, wow, what have we gotten into here? Don't be afraid to break into it, okay? If you make a mistake, go talk to a gunsmith buddy. It's all right to admit defeat, but you're never going to learn if you don't take a little bit of risk. So there are my top 10 tips for the home gunsmith. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I've really been enjoying doing these top 10s, and I hope that you guys love them, and I hope that this information helps a lot of you on your journey to being self-sufficient and working on your own guns. Definitely thank you guys for watching. I mean it. Make sure you go over and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you're getting all of our videos. Go over to Ballistic Ink and pick yourself up an awesome new t-shirt. That's one way you can support our efforts directly if you wish to do so. If you enjoyed today's video, consider buying a shirt. And thank you guys so much. And don't be afraid to get in there and wreck a gun or two. It's going to happen. But good luck on your journey to doing your own work. And thanks for tuning in. Many more videos on the way. We'll see you soon.